Welcome back to our channel. We say a very big thank you to everybody that has taken out time to subscribe to our channel, that has watched our video, commented and liked. We also want to say, if this is your first time of coming to our channel, please remember to click on the subscribe button, click on the bell icon to get notified whenever we drop new video. Thank you and God bless you. President-elect Joe Biden and his transition team are preparing for an early all-out push to pass an ambitious new stimulus bill, while also drawing up plans for a flurry of executive actions aimed at delivering on campaign promises and undoing the Trump administration's efforts to undermine key government agencies. Biden will be inaugurated in January with a pressing mandate to confront simultaneous and interwoven public health, economic and racial crisis. At the same time, his team will take over the work of spearheading one of the most complicated, politically fraught mass vaccination campaigns in American history. Biden's agenda for his first 100 days in office will, according to both those close to him and outside groups in contact with his top aides, center on two key avenues of action: the passage of a broad economic aid package, and where legislation is not necessary, a series of executive actions aimed at advancing his priorities, containing the COVID-19 pandemic, launching an economic recovery, and tackling racial inequality are his most urgent priorities, transition officials says. The scope of stimulus legislation will likely turn on the results of the Senate runoffs in Georgia in early January. A little more than 2 weeks before Biden is inaugurated, if either Democrats fail to unseat their GOP incumbent rivals and the body remains under the thumb of Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, the Kentucky Republican, Biden's ambition will be checked from the outset. The immigration legislation Biden said he plans to send to the Congress within his first 100 days would likely be dead on arrival. But sources familiar with internal discussions stressed that getting a grip on the surging coronavirus crisis is far and away Biden's top concern. Until that happens, one of the sources said, the president-elect's wider legislative agenda is likely to take a backseat. The realities of a divided Washington, or one where Democrats hold the slim congressional majorities, mean any big legislative initiative will either need some bipartisan support or demand uniform Democratic backing. Further complicates the road ahead. Biden is planning an announcement sometime in December to spell out his priorities to the public, according to sources involved in the plan. Meanwhile, the Trump administration and its allies have sought to plant a minefield of complications for its successor. A Trump nominee slow-walked the formal process for allowing Biden's team to engage with government officials, and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin demanded the Federal Reserve return unused funds from an emergency lending program to Congress, leading the Fed to issue a rare public protest. Biden has a wider berth when it comes to executive orders. His transition team has spent months thinking through the unilateral actions Biden could take almost immediately upon entering the White House. No final decision has been made on specific steps, but a transition official said Biden will consider using many levers at his disposal. In an interview with NBC News last week, Biden singled out the stimulus package and committed to making sure it targets the most vulnerable communities and includes aid to cash-strapped states and local governments. In his speech, he said, "There is multiple things that are going to be taking place at the same time. But the most important thing, I think, is to focus on those folks who are always, when crisis hits, are the first ones hit, and recovery comes to last. Healthcare workers and first responders," he said, "should be the first in line to take a COVID vaccine once one is authorized for use and distribution channels open up." But Biden acknowledged that a good deal of his agenda could come to depend on the kind of cooperation I can or cannot get from the United States Congress. He cited his commitment to send legislation with a pathway to citizenship for 11 million undocumented immigrants to the Senate. But also, he said he was poised to immediately roll back some Trump's very damaging executive actions, in particular those related to the climate. Some of that can be accomplished by faith, Biden's campaign said before the election, spelling out a series of measures that would bring down emissions, up public investments in clean energy, and incentivize private innovation. But the scale of the climate agenda agreed to by Biden-Sanders unity task forces will require legislation. How that takes shape remains to be seen, and likely so many other questions facing the transition could hinge on the outcome in Georgia. Many leading climate activists have long believed that any significant investment in a transition from fossil fuels will need to be backed into an expansive economic stimulus bill. By this summer, after engaging publicly and privately with Biden's campaign, they came away with a conscious optimism that the president-elect team was coming around to a similar understanding. Some of the most notable early work of the Biden administration in waiting, which is coming together at breakneck speed with the rollout of nominees to influential cabinet posts and announcement hires to senior White House posts, will take place outside the Oval Office. Trump's officials have gutted or hamstrung agencies whose charters clash with the president's long-running efforts to crush with his former chief strategist, derisively labeled the administrative state. That means an early effort, Biden indicated in his NBC interview, to rebuild the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, he said, has been eviscerated by Trump. There is also a growing push for the new administration to make an early splash by using executive power to forgive students' loan debts. Biden has called on Congress to pass relief to borrowers, but a plan promoted by Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer of New York and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren argues that Biden could with the stroke of his pen, cancel as much as $50,000 per person. Wow. You've heard it all. Like to get your comment on this. Also, click on the subscribe button, click on the bell icon to get notified whenever we drop in new updates. President